Donald Trump revealing details this week how he's trying to separate his businesses before getting sworn in as president. But top Democrats saying he is not going far enough, and Democrats are still bashing Trump for his wealthy cabinet picks. Now some here saying we want successful Americans who made their wealth before entering public office rather than getting rich because of their public service. Are they right or wrong? Hi, everybody. I'm David Asson. Welcome to Forbes on Fox. Let's go in focus to find out with Rich Karlgaard, Mike Ozanian, Elizabeth McDonald, Sabrina Schaefer, John Tamny, and Bruce Japsen. So, John, here's what Donald Trump says about all this. Take a listen.
One newspaper criticized me. Why can't they have people of modest means? Because I want people that made a fortune. Because now they're negotiating with you. These people have given up fortunes of income in order to make $1 a year.
So, John, isn't it better to have rich, successful people in office than folks who try to make money off of their public service?
Well, I don't exactly love when talented people leave the private sector because I think that could have potential deleterious effects on the economy. But I do love that these people are rich and have conflicts at the same time. Let's look back to the 80s and 90s when asset prices were rising. The electorate were very happy. If, in fact, Trump's appointees leave office richer based on the wealth they brought into office, we'll know that the economy is much better off and that voters are much happier.
Well, Mike, let's look at Trump's picks, the ones that are being focused on. These people are very rich. They were very successful in the private sector. They got rich as a result of that. A number of them are billionaires. Is that a good thing?
Not necessarily. I mean, David, I wouldn't like to see George Soros's face up there, and he's one of the richest people in the world. I mean, I'm interested
So not all rich people make the right decision, I guess.
Exactly. I'm more interested in people that believe in the principles of the Constitution and favor individual liberty. Beyond that, if they've been successful in business, I think it could be a plus. One of the things I like about his top cabinet picks is he's much more heavily tilted towards people with business experience who have also not been in government. What we've had for the past 8 years is exactly the opposite.
Yeah. But, Rich, we are a free market system, and generally speaking, successful people do the right things to become rich, right?
Yeah, that's why I support what he's doing. Look, investment creates prosperity. Prosperity creates wealth. Wealth creates more investment. And the cycle repeats, and that's how you get from 2% growth, which we've had over the last 8 years, to 3 or 4% growth, and that's what the country really needs right now.
And, Sabrina, I don't think we ever need people who think of public service as just a quick and easy way to get rich, right? I mean, I can't help it, but I'm thinking about the Clintons. I'm thinking about a lot of people that worked with them, and it happens with Republicans as well, people who profit off of their public service.
Of course, David, you're referring to this revolving door we have here in Washington where people go in and out of public service, and they do get very rich. I think the one thing I do like about some of these ideas of pulling people in from business is that they have real experience in all sorts of different fields, from industry to medicine to law. That's a great thing. It means that they've experienced firing and hiring. They've experienced ups and downs. They understand regulation and political red tape, and that should only help us.
Emac, what do you think?
Well, you know, I don't want to see any corruption probes or any corruption in the incoming Trump administration. I mean, that's what Senator Elizabeth Warren was getting at with Ben Carson, saying, is Trump's real estate empire going to benefit from any HUD money? I mean, I can see the question. I understand what she's trying to say. I don't really see that happening. But Trump still has a stake in his empire, and he's going to get dinged for that. But that's an issue. But the issue that we've been living with for 8 years is the mindset of the Democrats. You didn't build that attitude.
Right.
Bernie Sanders going after the small business guy saying, quote, I'm not concerned about your income. Watch this. The Financial Times says the combined number of years of the top 8 Obama officials in the private sector, 5. That's it. 5 years in the private sector.
Wow. By the way, just for the record, we checked with the Brain Room. No Trump organizations receive public housing funds ever, so I don't think there's a conflict of interest there. But, Bruce, what about this? You don't support people trying to get rich off of their public service, do you?
Well, here's the deal. And by the way, you know, President Obama has Penny Pritzker, who is the head Commerce Secretary, and she took 6 months to disclose her conflicts and whatever. And I think that these cabinet people, one of the things I'm listening for is, what are they going to do for the little guy? I mean, when Steve Mnuchin, who gets up there and testifies, is he going to want to get rid of the carried interest loophole and talk about tax cuts for poor people in the middle class? And I want these cabinet people to be transparent, and that's the problem with Donald. We don't know where he made his money or how he made his money or who he owes debt to.
But, you know,
go ahead, Sabrina.
I was going to say that this gets to the larger point, which is the problem with having people from business is that government has simply grown too large and too invasive. So I love the idea of people coming in from outside of Washington to serve at any level of government. The problem is that government is in every industry. It's in energy, it's in education, it's in healthcare, it's in oil. So, I mean, it's hard for government not to, or it's hard for these people not to be somehow impacted. That's a very bad thing. We need to rein in the state.
John Tamny, one of the things I love about Forbes when they put together their richest Americans, you know, they put together the richest people in the world. Most of them are Americans, and most of them didn't have money to begin with. Most of them are self-starters. So isn't it better if you want small business to grow, you get people who know what it's like to start at the bottom?
Yeah, you want people who've lived under the laws that have been created by Republicans and Democrats over the last few decades. I think that ultimately helps. I like people who have skin in the game. If, in fact, they do, they are going to make laws that make it less penalty focused on people who actually have wealth. So this is a good thing. Mike's right. It's ultimately about the policies they propose, but skin in the game is helpful. There's not been enough in modern times.
I'd like to see every Democrat, every Elizabeth Warren, President Obama, Bernie Sanders, go start a business under the rules and taxes that you created. And this idea that, you know, oh, a business person is in the White House or in the cabinet. FDR had businessmen. JFK had businessmen. I mean, we lived through an abnormal period the last 8 years. We fell through the looking glass, and all of a sudden, businesses were evil. No, they pay your paychecks, Washington, D.C.
And Mike, I get what you're saying about the fact that some rich people make their billions based on their relationships with government, kind of the crony capitalism stuff. But generally speaking, I mean, rich people in America get there because they deserve to get there, no?
Yeah, that's true, but, you know, your cabinet picks are very few. So you have a wide pool of rich people to choose from, or people that aren't rich. I'm concerned about their principles, what they believe in, what they followed through in their life. We've talked a lot on this show about giving the average Joe a chance. The way you do that is you follow the intent of the Constitution and you push individual liberty. There are a lot of rich people against that.
You know, you make a great point. And Rich, I'm going to go to you because particularly in Wall Street, the area that Mike and I live in, there are a lot of rich people that forgot where their roots are. They forget about the folks starting from the bottom. Now, where you are in Silicon Valley with all of the self-starters, it's a very different situation. Do you think that input is well represented in the Trump administration?
You know, you took the words right out of my mouth. I see 3 Goldman Sachs executives. I see Wilbur Ross, who buys distressed assets. I would like to see some from-the-bootstrap entrepreneurs. I was thinking Fred Smith of FedEx, who started FedEx in 1971. Good point. Or John Mackey of Whole Foods, or Peter Thiel. He needs a little bit more of that.
Good people all.